This episode of Skirmish Supremacy is brought to you by Reformation Brewery, the official beer of your game night.
We just talk and then never record. I don't think that's ever happened now that I think about it. That would suck if it did.
What, that we just talked and didn't record?
Yeah, just talked and didn't actually hit the record button. That would
Well, I mean, we did have that one time with Chris Birch that we hit the record button, it recorded everything, it just recorded it as silence.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That was fun. But anyway, this one hopefully won't do that. So, folks, if you could hear this, then nothing got screwed up on Google's side.
Yes. Success.
All right. So I suppose let's kick this thing off. All right, folks, welcome back to episode 131 of Skirmish Supremacy. Tonight, Nick and I are joined by Nick Baran. Oh, God, this is going to be one of those episodes. It's the Nick and Nick.
It's a Nick and Nick show again. Yes.
So he, of course, for those of you that have listened in the past, is the mastermind behind the miniatures game Broken Contract. And he actually has a Kickstarter going right now for his new Breaker miniatures, and it is well on its way to being funded. And Nick, how the hell are you doing, man?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, good. So, I can't complain on my side. We've been horribly busy lately, and it looks like you have been too. Yeah. Showing off some of the newer stuff. So yeah, I guess to get this started right, because I know it's been a little bit since you've been on, why don't we kind of touch base a little bit about what Broken Contract is, and also a little bit about what you're doing on the Kickstarter. And I'm sure we'll go off on many tangents there in between.
Very good. Okay, so Broken Contract is a skirmish game, micro skirmish game, usually use 4 models per side. And it is it was my attempt to create a game that accurately captured an action movie. The goal was to have more than just options for play than just moving and combat. I wanted there to be actions that were more utilitarian, like yelling "stand down" or being able to pick up things and throw them. So essentially, I created this kind of RPG light that I'm very proud of. And so it is a dystopian sci-fi game. It's I drew off of things like Firefly, Cowboy Bebop, the movie Snowpiercer, things that were very character-driven. Being focused on your character is a very important thing. You're able to create your own characters instead of just using named characters. And I really wanted to create something that really kind of catered to my own interests in gaming. And that's the basic rundown.
Nice. Perfect. Clear and concise. It lasted a grand total of about 3 minutes. We've still got 57 minutes to fill this episode. No.
Oh, once I get going, I can talk.
Yes. Awesome. So yeah, with the new Kickstarter you got going now, this one is actually to help supplement the core game. So what is the goal of this Kickstarter?
Okay, so the initial goal of the Kickstarter is I created within the storyline of Broken Contract, which is a story about breakers, which are miners in this dystopian future on a far-off planet. They're basically slave labor, and they revolt against their corporate masters. Within the breakers, which are mostly normal humans, there are gen mods, which are genetically modified humans, basically super strong workers that the corporations have no qualms about working to death. So the Kickstarter is to release 2 brand new Breaker Gen mods. And there already was a Breaker Gen mod that comes in the core game, but it was one of the first models that I released, and I should say one of the first models I had sculpted. And he's just like a single pose model. And as I got more familiar with the process of getting models sculpted and what have you, the option to have multi-part models became available and easy to do. And so, yeah, it only made sense that, I'm working with a fantastic new sculptor, and I wanted to have them do a multi-part version of both a female gen mod and a male gen mod. And so I had those models sculpted, and I sat on them for a while, was working on getting some other models sculpted, and now that we're looking at Adepticon looming in, just like 4 months, 5 months away, 4 months. 4 months.
Yeah, no pressure.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, okay, it's time to, get some new models out into the masses. And so I wanted to start with the 2 gen mods. And hopefully if people support and get me to the $750 that I need to get those 2 models manufactured, we can push towards additional stretch goals that will, within Broken Contract, there is the option to play characters that are teens and children, because you can't have a story about indentured servitude without child labor. So yeah, if we can get past getting these gen mods, then I want to release a couple of teens and children insurrectionists, and then hopefully move on to some other things as well. So.
Sweet. Yeah, because I've been looking through the everything that you've got working on as far as this Kickstarter goes. I really love the 2 new sculpts of the gen mods. They're again, I love the old one, but then again, these new ones are much more dynamic, and the fact that you've got a female gen mod, which of course, like, gender stereotypes aside, it looks like a giant female bodybuilder. So, you put them side by side, you're like, wait a minute.
we actually used female bodybuilder references in the process of developing the art and then getting it sculpted. So that was the goal.
Oh, you nailed it! Like, taken from somebody who used to work in the personal training side of things, and well, I spent a lot of time with Florida, man. So I'm used to the bodybuilder scene. So yeah, you got it right. So
very good.
Awesome. So you've got the new gen mods. You've got some. You've also got a multi-part kit that you're looking at doing for a few of the leaders, right? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and really the goal, if people want it, one of the things that's kind of unique about this Kickstarter is that I've got a survey monkey that goes up for each stretch goal. So I had put an ad on Facebook ads soliciting people's opinions on what the first stretch goal should be. And then I did now that we've got the Kickstarter launched, there's another survey monkey that's up that's to choose the next stretch goal. And one of the things that one of the options is additional arms and heads for the gen mod, for the female gen mod, additional arms and heads for the male gen mod. The idea being that, if that's what people want, because to have that female gen mod who has the chain, to have her with like an oversized sledgehammer or throwing a barrel. I mean, her body positioning is ideal for either of those things, and I would love to see it happen. So really, it's a matter of seeing what people want and adding those options on. But yeah, that other model that you saw at 65 backers, I will send people a free male Breaker crew leader, and that Breaker crew leader was a model that I had sculpted originally. It was based on my dad. So one of the heads that you're seeing when you're looking at it is actually my dad's face. When I had that model sculpted, the sculptor, if you were to pick up the model and hold it, the sledgehammer is just ultra thin. And it was just like the haft of it it bends all over the place. And so I decided, well, since I'm going to be doing this Kickstarter to try and get these other things sculpted, hey, I'm going to get this model fixed. I'm going to have them add some additional different arms, which you can see are pictured there, a couple of new heads, and then also make sure that Sledgehammer's shaft is just it's not going to bend all over the place.
Right.
A nice thick shaft.
Yes, exactly. Because we keep it classy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's good to know that the shaft will not go limp by looking at it the wrong way.
Yes.
Now that we got the dick jokes out of the way.
I've got a 12, almost 13-year-old, so he's learning all these different jokes and references. So he's like, ooh. It makes it even better because I can torture him with stuff.
Well, if that's the case, then I do have to ask this question, Nick. Does he listen to the episodes now?
I don't know if he does yet.
Okay, so I'm going to ask this one real quick. Benny, do you want a beer? Moving on. All right. So awesome. So you got a couple things planned. You got the kids planned. You got obviously the multi-part kit plan once you hit the 65 backers. Obviously the super cool gen mods. Do you have anything, if it gets really, really far, that's going to be there for any of the other factions outside of the Breakers?
Yeah. There's nothing sculpted for the other factions outside of the Breakers currently. One of the things that I don't know if Nick saw in the update, or if you saw in the update, but people have been asking me for dogs for forever, and so I ended up I've got a concept. Or I should say a concept. It is a picture of a dog that has a blade leg. Because one of its legs has been amputated, and on its back leg, it's got a knee brace, similar to the knee brace that I would play when my band would wear when my band would play. And so, this pit bull, big smile, all beat up with, he's got his peg leg essentially, and his knee brace. I was like, this is a mod. If I'm gonna do a dog, if there's gonna be a dog for Broken Contract, this is the dog. So yeah.
That
as
poor
far
puppy.
What'd you say?
I said that poor puppy.
Yes, exactly. I just envision him, him being much beloved by his breaker crew because he dragged some kid out of a cave-in and ended up getting all messed up in the process, and so they love and cherish this dog. So yeah, I get all sorts of wacky ideas.
And
I will put this out there that if we get to the point of getting this dog and anybody's playing the game and kills that dog, I will hunt you down and I will find you.
You're a terrible person.
You're a terrible person for taking out the goodest boy.
Yep, exactly.
The bestest puppy.
Of
course. So that makes me think. Ash Barker's been playing his game Last Days, and in his warband he has this dog that's got 3 legs now. Something happened. One of them got shot off in like the very first game. And so like all throughout, he's playing this scumbag crew, but all throughout you're always like cheering on his dog.
Yep. It's funny how that is. I actually I've been playing a lot of Dungeon Crawl Classics the last year, and when I don't know if you're familiar with that RPG at all, but you start off at zero level, and you get an occupation, and if you're a herder, you get a dog. You just start off with a dog, and sure enough, the dog immediately became the most popular member of the party. And so I ended up creating my own dog rules, my own canine rules, character class essentially for Dungeon Crawl Classic, so that my party could continue to enjoy this dog, because no matter what happens, the dog lives. So
I was going to say, so you could play the dog and then the human is your NPC counterpart.
You could do that. That would be funny.
But, that's awesome.
All right, so what I hear is we're getting dogs. Everyone be happy. Rejoice. Dogs are coming. Back for more
dogs
money.
Yes, there you go.
And so the other option that I saw that you had, which is, I think it's really cool, especially since like you're pretty much a one-man show for the most part. Obviously you have artists and whatnot that you do, but as far as like rules and setup and like box content, it's all you. You actually have a couple different backer levels for folks that really want to get involved, like the I Am Art, and you also have the I Am Miniature.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and that's something that I did in a previous Kickstarter. And this guy Adam became he wanted to be an unaffiliated a security officer, basically a security officer that didn't agree with Black Squadron. He just happens to work for them. Mm-hmm. And so we did that in a previous Kickstarter, and that was actually the first sculpt that my current sculptor did for me, and I think the model came out fantastic. And so the art, basically the guy sent me, the backer sent me 2 pictures of himself, and then I took those 2 pictures, sent them to my artist Philip Dudek. Philip Dudek did a beautiful piece of art, and then I sent that to the sculptor, and the sculptor did that piece of art with additional heads and an additional weapon. And I would love to do that again, because I think it's a fantastic thing. And in addition to if somebody backs at that level, in addition to getting a model sculpted of themselves, I had thought about it in different ways. Do people want a print of the art? Do the people want the art in some other way? And because I get currently all of the Broken Contract box games are done print on demand. Essentially, I go through the Game Crafter. I can put anything on the box art, and right. So being able to, if somebody wants to, have a model created of themselves or have art created of themselves in the Broken Contract setting, I can throw that on the starter box just for them. And I think it's, somebody who's a gamer, do they want a picture of themselves, in as a breaker or a Black Squadron security officer? Do they want that hanging on their wall in their living room or their game room, or do they want it on the gaming product that they actually, take out and play? And I think they would probably rather have it on the gaming product. I'm sure somebody's fussy, like, I don't think I want that on the wall. But you can definitely have it on your box game. So
no, I'm vain as a motherfucker. I put that as a giant poster on my wall. My wife would be so pissed. I would get that thing blown up and just cover one side of my wall. She'd come home and she'd pretty much want a divorce. But the point is that I would totally do something like that. But at the same time, I think it's really awesome. So now, and then obviously the big level is the I Am Miniature. This one, a hefty price tag for a lot of people. Yeah. But the amount of work that goes into it is where that comes in. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Because, I'm paying the artist to do the art, paying the sculptor to do the sculpt, having the custom box set made for you. And then you also get all of the basically everything from this Kickstarter all thrown in with that as well. So it's like, it's if you've got the money, it's a sweet deal. So.
Yes. And then, so with that one, if I remember correctly, they're actually getting 5 copies of the game?
No, 5 copies of the model.
Okay.
Of themselves. And then
boy, did I read that wrong.
Yeah, you did read that wrong. That's okay. But
and I heard the panic in Nick's voice.
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
Yes. But they the one thing that they can add on to that is something that they might want is they can, for $20 each, they can add an empty box of the art of them, so that if they wanted to have, a Broken Contract starter box, sent to a friend or whatever that has their art on it, that's totally a thing they can do. So because Nikki B here might
Nice.
might want to have. Oh no, where'd he go?
What? I'm right here.
Okay.
I'm still here.
No, Tim vanished for a second there, but yeah. So if Nikki B wanted to have 5 copies of a box set with his image on that box and sent to all of his friends, he could do that.
Oh yeah.
Wait a minute, I vanished.
I would totally go over to Tim's house and wallpaper his wall with my face.
There you go.
I may or may not have already done that before.
That's besides the point.
It'd be another wall.
Yes. Awesome. So with that, obviously, you would actually work to, it's not just a general miniature. They would be turned into a character for the game for future releases, and people could actually buy that miniature, I'm guessing, on your webpage and everything else that goes along with it. Because, well, you're not going to make a miniature just for one person and not turn around and sell it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, they become a permanent part of the game.
Fantastic.
Who is the guy?
Yeah, that's Adam.
Yeah,
you got Adam right there.
Yep.
Awesome. So obviously you've been doing a lot with Broken Contract. You're doing little bits here and there. You've actually been working pretty closely with the folks at Wild in the Streets too, haven't you?
Yes. Yeah, actually, I was just sending messages back and forth with Chris just yesterday, day before yesterday, because with the new black metal models that he kickstarted, I was already thinking about scenarios that I wanted to build based around the black metal models, because before I was involved in the gaming industry, I was in punk bands for years, but I found punk through metal. Yeah. And when I was in high school, I used to go to field parties all the time. And what the fields that we would hang out in, there was this crazy guy that decided to build a zip line in the woods, like this total renegade, not safe for others zip line. and I remember this was before I was straight edge. I would go and get trashed, and I would climb up this tree, and the zip line went over the campfire. And you would ride through the zip line through the campfire and to the other side. And I just had this image, because it was all metalheads. I had this picture of his black metal gang, and there being trees. I had, 3 on the board, 3 feet across with a zip line in between, and being able to go up the zip line and then dive bomb people in the middle of the board as you were I get crazy ideas.
That would be awesome.
I love everything about this, because that's actually one pledge I got to get behind, because my big thing is, I grew up on metal, and I didn't really go the punk route. I went more the goth and industrial route. Mm-hmm. A lot of people can't picture it if they've ever seen me, but at one point I had the long hair. I used to be able to do my own makeup without a mirror. And honestly, I don't think my wife has ever seen any of my old goth pictures.
Probably
there's something to see. But yeah, so for me, it was goth, industrial, and metal were my big influences growing up. And today, I think I still listen to more metal than anything. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's after seeing that gang come out, I was like, I need that one.
Yeah,
because growing up, sure. I knew a lot of people in the punk scene, but I'm not gonna say that there wasn't punk music that there wasn't punk music I didn't like. It was just there was certain aspects, at least from where I was in Wisconsin, where it's I don't know if I could really hang with you folks.
That's one of the things that with the Milwaukee Metal Fest and all of that, Milwaukee is just a metal town. I run with a lot of punks, but all of the punks here still have this deep love for everything metal. And I don't feel like that was necessarily a thing any of the other cities that I lived in. It was normal for there to be a certain level of, even though I was a punk that loved metal, there was a lot of punks that I knew that had an animosity towards metalheads, which is why Wild in the Streets works, because skinheads and metalheads and punks and that didn't all get along all the time.
No.
And so
And for those of you listening that don't know Wild in the Streets, I know we went off on like totally different game here.
Yes.
But this is not like Nazi skinheads. This is going back to the original roots of kind of where skinheads started before Nazis got involved.
Yeah. No, Oi and Ska and those scenes. So, yeah, completely different thing. So,
yes.
Or at least a mostly different thing. But yeah.
Put it.
Yeah. And my connection, because I didn't clarify this at the beginning, my connection to Wild in the Streets is I loved the idea of Wild in the Streets so much, and I felt like Chris, he had a great range of models, but not a whole lot of content, because it was basically, a double-sided piece of paper. That was the rules to the game. And so I approached him and I said, hey, I've got this idea to do a punk-style fanzine called Tooth Chipper and put a bunch of themed scenarios into this zine, along with some actual, like references to like playlists of favorite metal and punk and industrial records, and just do it like it's a punk zine. And he's like, "That's a great idea. Let's do it." And so I ended up writing a bunch of scenarios, and then getting a scenario from Chris and a scenario from Ash Barker, and put out this 16-page zine. And I feel like it got good reviews in terms of people. Like, there were people that were coming up to me at Adepticon that didn't know what it was and were like, "This is cool," and they bought it just because it resonated with something from their youth. It kind of tapped into their nostalgia or whatever. So but it was a really fun project. And so I contacted Chris about, hey, let's start Tooth Chipper number 2. And he's like, yeah, let's do it. So
awesome. So you guys are already working on Tooth Chipper number 2. You're probably going to have some stuff in there for the roller derby girls as well, because that was one of his other things on the Kickstarter, his previous Kickstarter.
Correct.
Awesome. So what do you got planned for them?
For the derby girls?
I'm picturing just like warriors, like the movie The Warriors. Like, that's all I'm getting in my head.
I totally get that. But yeah, actually, I haven't put too much thought into what, how I would theme the Derby Girls, because without doing, like, I've spent some time thinking about, okay, could you do a scenario where it takes place at like a flat track derby match, and where everything hits the fan during the middle of the derby match. But that would require me to do a little bit of a deep dive into YouTube, just to, maybe get a sense of, how flat track derby matches, take place, so that you can get an idea for what's the word I'm looking for, deployment zones and that sort of thing. But yeah, unfortunately, I've only ever been to one derby match, though I know a bunch of people that are into derby. So it's going to require more research for me to do something that really captures the essence of it. Whereas, because I came up in metal and punk, there are certain things that were just so, like, in Tooth Chipper number 1, some of the scenarios that I came up with were based upon things that actually happened. Stories, like one of the scenarios is based upon, I knew a guy who there were 2 shows that were happening at the same time in Iowa, in the Quad Cities. There were 2 shows happening at the same time, and the older punks that were doing the one show and the younger punks that were doing the other show, they were mad at each other. So the older punks went over with a bunch of like firecrackers and smoke bombs and like threw them into the other show in order to force it to clear out. And it's just like such a stupid, childish thing, but it makes a perfect scenario for Wild in the Streets. So yeah.
It makes perfect sense, because typically that's how that happens is, hey, let's all go do this stupid.
Oh no, I lost you, Tim.
Oh, where'd you go, Tim?
Because this is all.
He came back for a second.
Yep, and then he's gone.
He keeps bouncing around. Will he recover?
I am here.
I don't. Oh, he's here.
His image is frozen in time.
Okay, there he goes.
I saw his head move.
Now he just won't know if it actually was breaking up or not.
No, now you're just fucking with me. Yeah, I've seen enough crazy stuff in my life at a lot of concerts and, you know, gatherings and whatnot to know that there's probably plenty of things that you could do in Tooth Chipper and never run out of ideas.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So here's a question for you. We're going to go off on some tangents on this shit. Did you ever go to Kit's Corner for any of the shows?
Kit's Corner?
Yeah.
No.
Right outside on Madison.
Oh,
so,
no.
They basically took what was like an old biker bar
and
they built like a small stage on it.
Okay.
So, So I know this is a little bit more on the mainstream side of the music as far as like metal goes, but like, you know, for bands that most people that are listening to this would recognize a little bit more clearly is, believe it or not, like Kit's Corner, which was a small venue, small venue, you can maybe fit 300 people in there. And that's like jamming it.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, Disturbed and Mudvayne and bands of that nature actually started at Kit's Corner before they got big in the Wisconsin area. And again, I know that's a little bit more on the mainstream side of like the rock and metal, but that ought to kind of give you an idea of what Kit's Corner was. Well, then they started like, as they realized that it's like, okay, that will sort of kind of have to work for the winter. When the spring and summer would come along, they would actually set up this massive stage outside. And then it was more like a legit concert where it's, you know, everything that you could possibly think of from, metal of all kinds, not just the mainstream stuff, but they had punk bands. They had, I would have to go back and look because I've got an old book here that kind of talks about a bunch of the events that they had back in my heyday. But one of the things I still remember to this day is the first time that they opened up the outside venue, they ended up getting a shitload of people. And that same night that everybody was performing, there was probably 15 fights that broke out. Like it got to the point that the cops were literally sitting there almost the entire duration of the venue. There's one guy that got his ass kicked so bad in the mosh pit, they picked him up out of the mosh pit and threw him up over the railing of the security because he was the guy that started it. And of course he got the beat down.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is fun.
Yeah. One of the things, not related to fighting, but one of the things that's fascinating about being, having been involved in punk and metal as long as I have, is that, are you familiar with the band Mastodon?
Yes.
So I saw Mastodon in 2001 at 99 Custer Street, and 99 Custer Street in Buffalo is a basement. It is, a tiny, house at the end of a dead end street, and they played in the basement. And then I saw, an announcement that they were playing at the Rave, and they were headlining over Dinosaur Jr. And I it's very hard for my head to wrap around this idea. Here's this band that I saw in a basement, and they're headlining over Dinosaur Jr. It's just, it's amazing where a band that plays basements can end up. When they stick with it for 17 years, I guess. So.
Oh yeah, and then like even people that started, where they started kind of basements, and even when they decided to do stuff on their own, like I don't know if you're familiar with Tim Skold.
I know the name.
Yeah. So, I mean, he actually had a massive success just like releasing his own, like he had a debut album that came out, and I'm forgetting the record label. I'd have to look it up afterwards, but he came out with his own like independent album that was just called Skold. It was just him. Okay. And then immediately after that, he's on with KMFDM. And then when they switch over to MDFMK, and then back to KMFDM. Yeah. And then
that's where I know the name from.
Yeah. And then he ended up with Marilyn Manson. And then he ended up in A Perfect Circle. And it's like, he's one of those guys that literally like crawled his way out of the nothingness and then just decided to hustle until he got to where he was.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, he was also one of those guys that like was very unique in his own ways. Cause like even his original album was like, you could tell it's like, yeah, okay, this is industrial, but like he is 100% doing his own thing and not copying a damn person.
Mm-hmm.
And then even when he joined with KMFDM, and I know that that's, you know, as far as like even the industrial side, they're considered more the mainstream, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that like even when he started with them, like KMFDM changed, and I felt like it was like, okay, this is Tim Skoll headlining KMFDM.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so like they even adapted to like what he was doing. So like he is one of those guys that to me is really impressive, like because he crawled out of like nothing. And like, sure, even when he was with Manson, he wasn't singing or producing or anything like that. He was just playing guitar. But the fact that it was like he did that on his own, starting at like, you know, corner shops and, you know, basements and then working his way up. And that's huge. Like especially when you see someone like that and you've been part of like in your own way, kind of part of that evolution. It's really cool.
Yeah. I'm gonna go on 2 very quick music tangents because we haven't heard a peep out of Nick in a while, but I'm gonna go on 2 very quick music tangents. One is that I did a wiki search on William Riflin from Ministry just recently, and I was fascinated to find out that he is currently playing drums in King Crimson, the 60s, 70s prog band. And that just kind of like blew my mind. And then the other thing that I'm going to go on a slight tangent. There is one other person that helps me out with Broken Contract, my buddy Hal. You've seen him at Adepticon. Probably with me. And he's like my primary play tester, and he did the Kickstarter video and a bunch of the graphics. And he is actually he's really into industrial, and he has a record release this weekend a tape release this weekend for his project Paralyze. And if you like Skinny Puppy or Youth Code, it's definitely worth checking out because he does really. In fact, the music that is in this Kickstarter video was actually soundtracked by Hal. So
send me all the info when we're done. I love Skinny Puppy.
All right, sounds good.
Awesome. So now that we've gone on a giant music tangent, everybody's going, aren't you guys talking about miniatures and shit? Too bad. This is what we do. But anyway, awesome. So
Streets is probably like, yeah, music. And everybody else is like, oh, let's talk about.
God damn it. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. So what have you, obviously I know that Broken Contract is your baby, but what else have you been playing lately, man? Cause I mean, we've kind of noticed, you know, obviously Tooth Chipper is yours, but you've made mention to quite a few other things that you've had your hands in.
Yeah. Well, actually, one of the things that I've really fallen in love with in the last year that I didn't expect, like I, got involved in playing Dungeons and Dragons, in 1983, and I fell in love with Dungeons and Dragons, and I obsessed over the idea of working for TSR when I got old enough to have a real job. That was the career that I wanted, was to, work for TSR and create stuff for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And then I found punk rock, and my whole life changed. And but during the mid 90s, I actually was part owner of a gaming store with a bunch of guys that I played D&D with, and somewhere in there we started carrying Games Workshop, and I fell out of love with role playing. And I fell in love with miniature games. And I never thought I was going to go back to role playing again. There were times after I moved to Chicago in 2006 that people would be like, "Oh, you should come play D&D with us, or you should play Pathfinder with us, or you should play, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay with us." And I just wasn't that interested. I went and played a couple of times and just was kind of bored. And then I discovered Dungeon Crawl Classics a little over a year ago. And I absolutely fell in love with this game. It's D&D like it's 1975. All of the art is like the books that I came up on, and I just fell in love with the game. And so started, writing modules that I intend to self-release. I was running. I wrote a module called "The Precipice of Corruption," and I ran it for my my home gaming group, and they all seemed to really enjoy it. And so, in the last year, I've started going to gaming stores and running that same module, and then putting up a Survey Monkey after, so I could get feedback and see which encounters were encounters that people really liked, and which encounters were ones that people thought were kind of forgettable. And so I've really been kind of immersing myself in this, and in the process, I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast when we were talking about dogs that I created, dog rules. So I'm taking all of this content that I've been creating, and I'm planning on doing stuff with it. The dog rules, and I created another character class. I intend to do a Dungeon Crawl Classics zine, and I think one of the things that coming from a punk background, I love the idea of fanzines, and Dungeon Crawl Classics is a gaming system that they absolutely endorse their fan base creating these zines. And so I'm like, these are it's like chocolate and peanut butter, two things I love put together. And so I started working on a zine for Dungeon Crawl Classics. So I got a module I'm working on, a zine I'm working on, and then I was like, hey, wait a second, this 0 level funnel really would work really well with the Broken Contract IP. The idea of having a crew of breakers that start off at 0 level, and it's basically a reverse dungeon crawl. You're trying to crawl your way out. And so essentially I started work just recently on taking the IP of Broken Contract and fusing it with the rules for Dungeon Crawl Classics in order to create a sci-fi RPG that is based on Broken Contract. So I've got a lot of I get way too many ideas, and I get I have a Google Doc. I'm sure you've got something like this. But I've got my Google Docs, and there's like 20 different docs that are all in various processes of completion. Whether it's additional content for Broken Contract, or whether it's I want to turn Broken Contract into an RPG, or I've got these tooth chipper scenarios that I want to do for Wild in the Streets, and I'm kind of all over the place.
I'll tell you what, man, between my two businesses, between Game Connect and Hammer Fist Games, it lives and dies on Google Drive. So yeah. I totally get it, because even when I was writing Ragnarok, everything I'm doing Ragnarok or anything dealing with my Morpheus engine is 100% on Google Drive. Yeah. So if that ever went away tomorrow, well, there's going to be words.
Oh, I would be so screwed.
Yeah.
See, that's why, as even the biggest tech person that, is around, I write everything hard copy. I carry around notebooks. Actually, I had to take several out of my backpack recently because they weighed way too much.
You're worried you're getting too buff?
No, not worried about getting too buff. When you're walking a mile, or so in the Georgia heat.
No.
And then you've got 30 or 40 pounds of crap in your backpack. You're just like, you know what? I don't need all of this.
No. It's funny. My partner, she's a librarian, and so she's always got a million books in her purse. And so if she does too much walking around, she's got back problems the next day because of all the books. So, but yeah.
Awesome. So obviously you are now trying to take the RPG world by storm.
It's kind of one of the things. I don't know if you've gotten this sense. I know certain of the indie miniature games are doing really, really well. Like Relic Blade, it's like Sean just keeps growing by leaps and bounds. At least that's the perception that I have. His fan base is ravenous. It's fantastic. But some of the other indies, like there was the guy who orchestrates my sculpting for me. He used to have his own game, Icarus Project, and he was based out of the UK. He did this game called Icarus Project, and the models are fantastic. But it was a game that didn't quite stick, and so he went from doing Icarus Project to doing terrain videos on YouTube, trying to do the vlog thing. And those were just so time intensive that then he made an announcement just recently that, he did a couple of RPG related videos, D&D videos having to do with using OneNote, whatever that is, as a platform in order to organize doing his D&D campaign, and his followers just shot through the roof, and his views shot through the roof. And it's a kind of an interesting situation that we're in. It's like Games Workshop right now. It's like I created Broken Contract because I wanted something that captured what I loved about Necromunda, but with things that I wished Necromunda had. And now Necromunda's back. And I look at, like the, Rogue Trader box set, or I look at the Warhammer Quest Blackstone Fortress.
Yeah.
And it's like, Games Workshop are just killing it. And so, there's part of me that's like, where do I fit into the current dynamic of the miniatures market? And it's like, I don't want to stop doing Broken Contract. It's my baby. But if I can keep doing Broken Contract, but also do this other thing that I love, and take my Broken Contract IP and some RPG stuff with it, and do Dungeon Crawl Classics, because it's something that I can do with my friend, a larger group of my friends, and get a lot of enjoyment out of. Hell, I'll spread myself around. It's
right.
As long as I'm having fun, that's the most important thing. And so I think that dabbling with a bunch of different things, and just having fun with what I'm doing is more important than worrying too much about when I'm just focusing on Broken Contract, and then just stressing, is this selling enough? Am I putting too much time into this thing that's not, giving enough of a reward? When you start stressing about things in that way, it takes the fun out of it. And so I've basically decided that I wanted to do things that I thought were fun. And so just keep dabbling with all the things that bring me joy, even if it does mean that things move a little bit slower, because I'm not just narrowly focused on that one thing.
And that's actually, it's a really good attitude to take and have, because we've talked to some people. I know there's some of the people out there who've so focused on their stuff, and then they've gotten burned out, where just like one issue after another crops up, and they're just left going, I just look at this and I hate it.
Yeah. Or,
I love this, but I hate what it is, kind of done to me at this point.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely a challenging thing. So, and they've had to, flip to, I'm just doing things that make me happy at the moment.
Mm-hmm. If you look at people, you look at somebody like Ash. His channel has morphed continuously over time, because he dabbled a bit with doing interviews with people. And I thought, when he did the Giga Robo interview, I thought it was fantastic. And I was like, I'd love to see him do more of this kind of stuff. But for whatever reason, it wasn't what he wanted. And so, he moved on to something else. And it's, I think that when people are willing to be flexible and try different things and see how it feels, and run with it if it works, and revamp if it doesn't, I think that's a cool thing.
It definitely is.
100%. You know, and Nick and I have actually talked about. It's funny you mentioned that. Nick and I have actually been talking recently about what we could do to modify the channel, because we like having these discussions, right? Like it's never just been about like, oh, look, another, like we don't want the channel to turn into like an hour-long advertisement for whatever your new game is. Obviously, yes, we like promoting the smaller companies' games. We've stated from day one that like we're really going to keep talking about Games Workshop and even War Machine, you know, Private to Press to a minimum, because they're big companies. They don't really need our help promoting, right? But like the small folks, they could use all the help they could get. And we like talking to them more because they're passionate about their projects, where, you know, not saying anything bad about GW or Privateer Press, but after working in the industry and kind of seeing how they handle things. And if you watch videos online, like everything they come in with is so scripted. Mm-hmm. Like everything's already planned out about what's going to be said. And it's like, well, that cool. So you've told me about your game, but what about like you? What's your personality? What do you like to do? What other games do you play? And you don't really get that from the big companies, where you get that from the smaller folks that, you know, like in your case, you've got Broken Contract. Mm-hmm. Your baby right now, it's in this kind of like miniatures hybrid setting, but you're also working on doing so much more with it outside of that. Mm-hmm. So, you know, and that's the thing that I've always liked about doing the kind of like forum discussion that Nick and I have done pretty much since day one, is, you know, I don't want to lose this, but we are also looking at like, okay, what else can we do to get, you know, listeners more engaged with us? Yeah. And, you know, we've tried bat reps, and it's not that we can't do bat reps, but we're just too busy to put together like a Walt Disney production. Yeah. You know, and that's really that's probably the biggest thing about bat reps, is that in order for you to put one together nowadays, like as much as I hate to say it, mini wargaming and Beasts of War ruined it for everybody.
Yeah, no, I mean the production values on some of the, like I actually right before we started this conversation, I just finished uploading my second review video. I've started messing around with a little bit of vlogging just because it just seems fun. And so I did a review that I released a few days ago of a zine RPG supplement called In the Name of Suffering that was released by the people at Corehammer. And then tonight I just released a vlog of a review of the Dungeon Crawl Classics Halloween module of The Corpse That Love Built. And, you know, I put these up, and they're more for fun. And, you know, I sit there and I pick apart. I'm like, okay, so this first one that I did, I'm like, I feel like my content, the things that I said about this zine module, really on point, but the production values, because the sunlight washed everything out, and I was holding the camera or holding my phone, and so it's super shaky. And I'm like, you know, compared to the ones that I watch, this is not that good. And so then The Corpse That Love Built, I made this contraption using my my partner. She had built a white box for photographing, and so I used the frame of the white box to hold two pieces of wood that I then put my phone on top of, so like top-down view. And that the production values on that video, The Corpse That Loved Built, came out much better. The lighting was better, the angle was better, there's no shaking, but I feel like the content of the review isn't as good. And so I you know, do these things and I analyze them and I pick them apart, but everything is me comparing what I'm doing to like Questing Beast or Matt Colville or these other you know, RPG vloggers are doing, and I'm like, yeah, you know, where I'm at is not where they're at, essentially. And that's the same thing with the battle reports. It's like, you know, comparing to people that have studios or have, you know, lighting setups and everything that you need to make everything perfect. I am not there.
Well, I understand that because I have so far invested quite a bit of money to be able to film and do all that stuff. And yet, everything that I've filmed, we've only released a small portion of what we filmed because generally I get kind of frustrated with it. And I'm like, nope, this isn't right. This isn't what I want.
Continue your thought.
Well, and some of it's also the realization that, some of it's got to be growing pains.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to, even though you can see where, this is how these people are doing it, they've spent the time and they've, made the mistakes, and you can learn some from it, but you're still going to make some of those mistakes because there's no other way of, going about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's like, like when I recorded the video for In the Name of Suffering, it was like, as I was editing it, I'm like, this is shaky as crap, and everything's washed out. And so I sat on it for a month, but I was really happy with the content. And so I was like, do I just put this in the bin, or do I put it up? And I finally was like, you know what? Only 20 people are going to end up watching it anyway, so I'm putting it up. And I think that's okay. That's the only way that I'm going to learn is by experimenting and trying new things. And one of the biggest killers of anything that I've ever tried to do was that sense that it wasn't good enough and just trashing it. And I've done that with so many things, and I'm trying to not do that as much.
Yeah. And that's the conclusion that I'm coming to. And actually, one of the funny things, there's this. Well, it's a set of YouTubers that all work together, but they also have their own individual channels. But every now and again, they'll either be referencing their counterparts' channels, and they'll flash something from the past for them. Mm-hmm. Or even one of them, he was talking about doing stuff on Halloween, and he's like, I haven't done this since like 2012 or whatever, and it flashed, and when it flashed to his old video, which you couldn't even hear what he was saying because the wind was blowing so bad, he didn't have a good mic. He was like 12 or 13 at the time, and it was actually a couple of years even before 2012. It was like 2010, and just all, and you're just like, oh yeah, you were trash once too, but you've been doing this for. Well, that video came out in 2010, so at least 8 years. Yep.
Sit down, shut up. Was it Shut Up, Sit Down? Sit Down, Shut Up. The board gaming reviews vlog that is fantastic, and they got great production values. There's 3 of them that are involved, so there's they write scripts and the whole 9 yards. Wear costumes sometimes, they do bit parts. They are fantastic, but if you watch the early ones, they're just them, talking about a game and cracking jokes in their apartment with, it's just,
You know what, Tim? That's what we're missing. Costumes.
Yes.
I told you we needed the luchador masks.
Either that, or I just, at Walmart right now, I noticed that the other day when we were in there, like looking at random stuff. I don't even know why the hell we were there now that I think about it. But like they had like the big discount, like shark heads from Halloween or like the cat heads. I'm thinking, okay, how do we make this work?
Yep. There you go. Of course, no one will know on a podcast. You're going to have to do that on video.
Oh, yeah. It has to be on video at that point.
Oh, wait. They have to see us? Ugh. No, thank you.
I know.
I'm good.
Though this would have been, potentially very different discussion if I was talking to you and you were a shark the entire time.
Now I need to make this happen.
There is that streaming software that will identify your face and all that and substitute it with something else. I know this one channel I looked at, the dude was a sock puppet, and so every time he talked, the sock puppet's mouth was opening and closing.
Yeah.
You know, so that way you don't actually have to put your face on camera.
Yeah.
You know, so
is there one that can make me max headroom? Because that might be fun.
You know, there might be. You never know. There probably is.
Yeah, now we got to find this stuff. Damn it. We went off on a tangent that we shouldn't have. That's going to lead to some things that we're going to be looking up later on that we might regret.
Yeah.
Regret nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome, man. So how many more days you got to the Kickstarter? It is, we're looking at 13 days?
Yeah, 13 days.
All right.
And I deliberately was doing one that was short and sweet. When I set it up, it started at 17 days. So basically 2.5 weeks. And we're just 4 days into it. So
nice.
Yeah, we're off to a good start, and you're most of the way there. Like, because I know like you didn't have a massive funding goal on this one.
Yeah, $750. So, you know, not but it's funny, you know, you think to yourself, okay, you know, $750 isn't a lot of money in you know, the great scheme of things, but I mean, that's all I need is money for production. And it's when I'm investing, you know, $500+ to each sculpt with art and what have you, to then be able to, you know, just, you know, hopefully crowdfund from a bunch of people and get those models produced. You know, it's a thing. So
awesome. Yeah, I mean, sometimes that is the advantage of being, you know, kind of a small press style company is you don't need a lot of money to get a project going.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the things that I'm like with Tooth Chipper, you know, the biggest investment in Tooth Chipper when I did Tooth Chipper was I spent like 3 hours at a time for like 4 Saturdays or 5 Saturdays in a row hanging out in Digicopy in Milwaukee, you know, copy shop. So that was like the big investment. That was way more investment than the actual cost of getting Tooth Chipper printed. And that's, you know, with Broken Contract, it's like, because I do everything in small batch printing, it's, you know, I'm very flexible in that if I just need, you know, 20 copies of the game, I can, you know, basically, you know, contact the game crafter, place my order, and, you know, a month later I've got 20 copies of the game and I'm good to go. So yeah,
that's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah, you know, it's more expensive that way, but it allows me to, you know, I don't have a bunch of inventory sitting around. I am very nimble.
Yes.
Which is nimble is good for somebody who has project ADD when it comes to everything. So
I think Tim and I are pretty familiar with project ADD.
Yes. It gets worse every year too. I think that's the worst part about it. It's like, and honestly, like looking at my backlog of stuff right now, if I did not have like deadlines for Osprey, mm-hmm. I don't know what the hell I'd be working on. Like I would be in 18 different directions.
Yeah. You know, that is one of the good things, like Adepticon. One of the things that I love about it now is it gives me focus in terms of like, I can screw around half the year, but then you get to October and you're like, okay, this is what I need to get done.
Right.
In order to be ready for the next convention season. So.
Yeah, that's very true. Speaking of Adepticon prep, I've still got stuff I got to get done, but that's a conversation for later time.
Yeah.
But awesome, man. Well, it was great having you on the show. Is there anything else you want to throw in there before we go? Where can we find Breaker Press?
All right, you can find Breaker Press on breakerpressgames.com. And if you go to breakerpressgames.com, you will notice that on the it opens up with the blog page, and if you scroll down the blog, you'll notice that there is stuff for Dungeon Crawl Classics. There is stuff for Broken Contract. There is Occasionally, like I did a feature on a bunch of indie games that all had Kickstarters going right now. So, I try to talk about more than just Broken Contract, just like how this interview went. So go there, check out, see the stuff that I've got going on. You can also link to my web store and what have you. Check out the Kickstarter. It's titled under New Breaker Miniatures. Check that out, and if you can support the Gen Mod models are fantastic. Keep an eye on Malev's Minis on Kickstarter and on Facebook. He's been painting up. I commissioned him to paint up all of the Broken Contract Minis, and he's been working on the stuff from the starter set right now, and it's coming out beautiful. So check that out. Also, it has nothing to do with me, but Sean Sutter, you guys already interviewed him a couple of weeks ago, but his next Relic Blade Kickstarter looks fantastic. And so that's coming up in his Kickstarter. I did this deliberately. My Kickstarter ends the day before his starts.
Nice. Because right now has been crazy Kickstarter season.
Yeah, yep. And mine's I deliberately started mine as the Wild in the Streets Black Metal Gang was ending, and it's going to end right before Relic Blade starts because I care. And so that's all stuff that is worth talking about. And I think that kind of wraps up what I've got going on.
Awesome, man. Well, Nick, as usual, it's great to have you on the show.
Yeah, I really appreciate having the time to talk, and I apologize to anybody that felt the music tangent went on too long, but
whatever. It's our show. We do what we want.
Yeah, exactly. And music is just as important to me as gaming is. So I'm sorry. It's just
it's not a problem. All right, folks. So that's gonna wrap up this episode of Skirmish Supremacy. We will see you next time.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Skirmish Supremacy. To see more of the antics that Nick and I do, you can check us out on Facebook at Skirmish Supremacy. We also have Twitter, which we can be reached at Skirmish Supreme, because apparently Skirmish Supremacy does not fit in Twitter. And if you want to email us directly, you can reach us at tim@skirmishsupremacy.com or nick@skirmishsupremacy.com. Thanks for listening.